Recently, I came across a study showing that emotionally connected consumers are 52% more valuable than those that are just highly satisfied. They buy more, they visit more frequently, they are less price sensitive. And today's brands aren't just selling products, they're creating experiences that make people feel something. Welcome to The Brand Behavior, where we dig into what makes brands tick and consumers click. And I'm your host, Juntae DeLane, and today we're diving into the fascinating world of emotional branding, that magical ingredient that transforms ordinary products into must-have experiences that customers truly care about. And in an age where customers are bombarded with endless options, creating unique, genuine emotional connections isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for survival. So we'll explore how authentic storytelling, data-driven insights, and purpose-driven strategies can create those powerful bonds that turn casual buyers into passionate brand advocates. And today we have our wonderful guest on the panel, Nataly Chigireva. She is a creative storytelling expert who crafts authentic brand narratives that resonate with audiences on a deeply emotional level. And we also have Richard Yumang. He's a data savvy strategist known for integrating consumer insights into innovative go-to-market approaches that drive emotional connections. Nataly, Richard, how are you all doing today?
Awesome. Thank you for inviting us.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We're really looking forward to get into this topic about emotional branding. So I want everyone to picture this. A woman opens a package and instead of finding her shoes, she discovers a handwritten note thanking her for her purchase, along with a small gift that perfectly complements her order. Now, that's not just good customer service, that's emotional branding in action. And recently I came across a study showing that emotionally connected consumers are 52% more valuable than those that are just highly satisfied. They buy more, they visit more frequently, they are less price sensitive. And today's brands aren't just selling products, they're creating experiences that make people feel something, right? And in our increasingly digital world, that human touch matters more than ever. So I want to talk about the power of authentic storytelling. So think about the last time a brand made you laugh, cry, or feel inspired. What you experienced wasn't random. It was carefully crafted storytelling designed to forge an emotional connection. And in a world where 86% of customers say authenticity is important when deciding which brand to support, storytelling often becomes a secret weapon for breaking through the noise. So for our listeners trying to build a lasting relationship with their audience, understanding how to craft narratives that resonate on a human level isn't just a nice skill. It's essential for survival in today's marketplace. And I know, Nataly, you know all about that. So let me ask you, how do you transform ordinary brand experiences into authentic stories that create genuine emotional connections with consumers?
Yes, absolutely. And I just wanted to second, I love that research that you mentioned about consumer loyalty and connection on emotional level. I think in the current digital world, we have attention span of a customer that dropped from 12 seconds in 2000 to attention of a goldfish, which is 9 seconds. And right now we are just going down, right? So it's 8 seconds, and some of the platforms, it's 1.2 seconds, like TikToks, for example. We also know that emotion has overtaken reasoning in the last decade, pretty much. And 80% of decisions are done on emotional level when it comes to choosing a brand. So I 100% agree. It's just so important right now for brands to communicate emotionally, just because we don't have time for reason anymore on those fast-paced digital environments and platforms. One of my favorite tools to use would be defining a clear brand archetype. Not sure if you guys are familiar with a brand archetype wheel, but if you look at all big brands, they're pretty clear using one of the archetypes that been historically defined just by human nature. So using and defining that archetype based on your consumer research would be probably a first very important step to take. either it's caregiver, rebel, or sage, whatever resonates with your customer. And just to emphasize, I think understanding your consumer on a very deep level, knowing what really motivates them, what triggers them to purchase, what do they fear, that just comes with the research that is beyond the surface level. Something that you cannot really guess and have to really dig deep.
Yeah, and I like what you said about knowing your customer, understanding your brand archetypes and so on, because ultimately what appeals to different segments of your customer is going to matter when it comes to the communication, right? And how you be able to connect with that specific customer on an emotional level. Right. And when it comes to the data to support that, right? I know, Richard, you know all about this, right? And so when analyzing customer data, what patterns have you noticed in how people respond to emotionally driven content or brand narratives versus the purely functional messaging?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot to unpack. I think just to level set for a second, I think really kind of looking above and beyond vanity-based metrics like likes, total comments. What are the conversations? What are the feelings? How people are perceiving this particular brand? And a lot, based on my experience, I've really noticed that a lot of them really have this similar question of how is this going? How is this particular product going to help me? How is it going to help my team? How am I going to be able to integrate this into our workflow? I think from a data perspective, you have to kind of like look above and beyond vanity-based metrics and really look at let the data guide you, not dictate. I think looking at specific metrics and even maintaining an ongoing feedback loop, the customer's feedback really does dictate the product marketing strategy when we're kind of pushing out either a product release or any type of blog, op-ed, thought leadership piece. There's always some metric that is attached to that specific initiative, and really looking at content performance, delta, A and B creative tests results, emotional resonance score usually does help, and then obviously looking at the creative testing of ROI. How do you measure the content based on the customer's feedback?
Yeah, no, that I totally get that. And when we think about, the data that showcases the ROI, what I think there are ways to sort of read between the lines when it comes to how the data is actually truly connecting with the consumers. What data points would you point to when you're trying to get more insight on how that messaging has emotionally connected with that consumer?
I think it's definitely customer feedback obviously is essential. I mean, in my past experience, we kind of did a product launch and then ultimately had 3 to 6 months to be able to conduct customer developer outreach with my former company from a product marketing standpoint. We did evaluated the data from 3 to 6 months, and then obviously reassessed all the information and presented the findings to my CTO. And then from there, continued the 8 to 12 months. From there, it really kind of gave us initiatives to be able to kind of, fill in the gaps when it comes to our digital experience onto our microsite specifically. I mean, we're dealing with multiple personas to people who are well informed in terms of what they want, and obviously the ones that are kind of still learning, understand the brand, but don't understand where they quite fit into the business model. So a learn path was obviously built from that particular project, and then obviously providing enough tools for our users to be able to help navigate themselves onto our microsite is essential, especially from the developer standpoint. Having them go onto the microsite and make a huge leap to go into documentation that's an enormous jump for someone who doesn't quite know what are the essentials they need right now. Definitely customer feedback is essential because that really does dictate the product marketing strategy. In terms of like the success metrics, I would think it allows us to be able to outline some type of benchmark. Are we driving user engagement, sentiment, efficiencies when it comes to our product releases, and how we're educating not only our existing users, but also our new developers, our new signups, specifically new customers?
Yeah. And so, all of that is obviously driven by data, right? And we often think of data as, data and emotion as opposites, right? One could be cold and analytical, one is, warm and more human. But the most successful brands today, I think, are bridging this gap, right? They're using sophisticated analytics to understand customer behavior, and it's enabling hyper personalized experiences that make the consumer feel or make it feel like surprisingly human, right? As you spoke to, I know brands using AI personalizations, right? Or they're receiving or seeing up to 20% or so in higher customer satisfaction rates because of that type of personalization. Right. And so for our audience of marketers, brand builders, and so on, finding that sweet spot between data insights and emotional resonance really represents the next frontier of creating that meaningful relationship with consumers. So, Richard, how are you integrating data analytics inside into developing go-to-market strategies that support emotional branding without losing that human touch?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the target for one of my campaigns that I'd worked on recently with our product marketing team was actually developing customer success stories. You had mentioned like brand authenticity, brand equity. These are users who've actually integrated the tool, believe in the brand, and have actually seen success through it. I think I'd worked closely with a solutions engineer at Esri that actually integrated our ArcGIS Online API. I'd worked with her for about two weeks to really outline the value exchange in the form of a product marketing video and really outline what are the key takeaways you want people to walk away with, and ultimately what is the CTA. I think when you're kind of investing brand authenticity, brand equity with an existing customer who's been with you for quite some time, you kind of make them full-fledged ambassadors at that point where they become advocates for the brand. And I think with this particular effort, integrating also the launch, the release, and also having a customer have advocate in a form of a product marketing video that showcased customer success, their integration, and obviously how the integration was a seamless process from an API perspective. We had worked on defense intelligence, which they focus on geospatial data, and it was a 4-minute video specifically, and I'm happy to share that with you guys as well, that showcased the outline of the step-by-step process on the integration. And then from there, she had a demo that was focused specifically on the Kabul in Afghanistan, around defense intelligence specifically. What was great about this particular effort is that we increased conversion rate by 7 to 8%. We obviously looked at success metrics such as like engagement, usage, ROI, and then ultimately from a long-term perspective, increased developer signups as well throughout this process. We got positive feedback from this particular product marketing effort. What was great about this particular video, because we focus on defense intelligence, Esri is a private sector company, but also state, national, local, federal government. So the CEO gave us both positive feedback, and then what was great about that product marketing video is that he reposted it to members of Congress. And then from there, we worked on another video specifically around supply chain management, which that topic definitely takes precedence what's currently happening now, but I'm not going to go there. It's one of those situations where it allowed us to be able to push content and have someone outside of our Esri ecosystem repost, reshare to another demographics that we normally wouldn't reach. See, that I think that in itself, you're building trust and equity with a specific a client or existing user. And I don't really look at these success stories as one-offs. It's really like a chapter of volume one. And as their story progresses, as their journey progresses as a customer and a client, we continue to follow and tell those stories.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I thought that, I think that from a geographic area and how things are communicated within that geographic area, it may change some of the marketing, right? And what's interesting is I know, Richard, you're in New York, right? Yeah, right. And Natalie, you're in Dallas, right? So I think with regard to communicating in those two areas, there's some things there's slight nuance, right? With regard to how things are communicated, the emotional appeal of messaging and so on. You have, your sort of fast-paced New York City type of lifestyle in what you're communicating while people are on the subway or whatever the case may be a little bit different than if someone were, I don't know, on a ranch in Dallas, right? As an example. But what do you think, or do you think that the geographic area plays a role in emotional marketing? And if so, how?
Is that for me or just
It's
anyway?
open for anyone, yeah.
I think it's broken up. I mean, I think it really comes down to messaging. I mean, yes, I agree with you. I think when we're dealing with throughout the buyer personas that I focus on specifically, they could be the economic, the one who owns the budget, the influencer who obviously provides validation and credibility for that particular product. And then there's like technical, which is like evaluates the requirements. And then obviously we have the functional, which is the primary user. So the pain points in messaging could be totally different at opposite ends of each other. So that really it really depends on what's defining the why. Like, what is that customer looking for? What do they need? What's the general ask? And I think with a lot of the overall, I mean, I think it's messaging from two different ends. And how do you nurture that relationship in terms of meeting those deliverables and expectations?
Yeah. And Natalie, have you noticed anything on that end?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're working for a brand for franchise organization, you may imagine we actually have franchises across the world, and it can be US and Canada, multiple locations, Europe, and the same product may have a different name in different countries, in different regions. And when you're crafting a message, you can actually sound more authentic as a brand and show and demonstrate that you know your audience by making a simple research or implementing keywords, understanding that in some regions the same service maybe have a different name or a more popular name, right? So we can talk about different things like dog daycare, pet care, kennels, just one example of variations that you may account. Making sure that you do your homework and implement that in your marketing strategy can actually be crucial in some cases.
Yeah. And I know out of, all the brands that you represent under your portfolio, you're constantly listening to what the market is saying, either about the brand or how they're receiving some of your brand's communications. But have you ever come across a time where the consumers are positioning your brand in a certain way that could be slightly opposite of what you actually intended them to do? And if so, how do you bridge that gap between and still remain authentic by recognizing, some of the trends that impact the brands that you represent, but also still remaining authentic and to your brand's core values while still addressing some of those trends? Do you understand what I mean by that?
Sure. I think it really comes back again to the brand truth and knowing your consumer, knowing your customer. I think trends are passing and it's great for all of the brands to be in a know and capture certain things, right? So you can play on a trend or you can create a certain campaign, but your core, your foundation always should be your brand truth, understanding real triggers and emotional connection. Why for customers it is important that they're choosing your brand, what your brand value is, not just simple features, right? But actual benefits. Like what are you solving for a customer, even emotionally? So I think that brand truth is going to live through times, no matter trends, if it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's especially when it comes to what may be going on in society in terms of social issues, right? What's going on in different geographic areas from all the brands that you represent. We have to take all that stuff into account, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember, when brands could just sell products without taking a stand on social issues, right? But those days I feel like are long gone because today's consumers, especially the younger ones, they expect brands they support to champion causes that they care about. Right. And in a recent study, it showed that 71% of consumers prefer buying from companies aligned with their values. But there's a fine line between authentic purpose and opportunistic woke washing, as they say. So for brands that try to navigate the complex landscape, finding and communicating your genuine purpose isn't just good ethics, it's good business that creates deeper emotional bonds with your audience. Is that something that you agree with? And can you provide some examples of ways in which some of the brands that you help to manage have sort of either took a stance on social issues or their approach to navigating through that process?
I can give you a recent example. Tariffs is a hot topic right now, especially for multi-location brand like we have Fast Signs. We have a lot of franchises that are located in Canada. And right now, obviously, when you start listening to what consumers are saying, what are social trends, what are the concerns in that area, you may find out that there's a big stand. Canadians are choosing Canadian brands. And if you continue to portray or push that this is American product, you may have a very negative feedback and outcome on your business. So I think it really depends, right? So making sure that you're adjusting your content based on that can play a crucial role, or making sure that you communicate in certain locations, right? That is actually a Canadian owned business versus its American brand can make a huge difference as well. So I think one thing is capitalizing on certain trends. Another thing is filtering. Is that even applicable to your brand? What about your target audience? Do they really care about that cause? And if they do, and you know that for sure, that's great. You can play in that trend. But I think this is where brand authenticity really comes in play, really knowing your customer, knowing what they care about, what social issues and what trends to take, what trends to path, just not participate.
Yeah. And I agree. I think this is going back to what Richard mentioned earlier in terms of that feedback loop, right? How you would be able to understand the true concerns on social issues for your customers is obviously by listening to them. So you can do social listening to what's going on via social media. You obviously can have some insight taken from conversations through customer service, things like that could help to really get a good idea of what your client is thinking, of what your customers are thinking with regard to social issues that may be impacting them or your offering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just to add to that, I think, especially when you're conducting, or even my experience of just even conducting like a customer outreach or developer outreach with either existing users or new developer signups, you have those real conversations. The main question that they ask is, how is this going to help me? And then we can, in the interview process or during the interview, the outreach, we'd ask those questions of like, why did you choose us? Why did you choose us versus our competitor? And then what are you currently working on? Is there anything that we're not communicating on our microsite that would be beneficial for you? And then continue that conversation. And then obviously towards the end, myself and the product manager would always reassure the interviewee, like, if you have any questions or anything, please look at me as a point of contact. If I don't have the answer, I'll find the answer for you. It's that personalization to really kind of take the new customer by the hand and really kind of provide enough tools for them to navigate onto our microsite on their own.
Yeah. All right, now I want to move on to creating sensory brand experiences. 'Cause obviously, that invokes some types of emotions, and this really reminds me of a book that I read a while back called Biology. I think it was from Martin Lindstrom was the author, but they talk about how um, there's different sensory triggers based upon colors, sounds, and so on, and how they impact um, purchasing decisions, right? From standpoint of when you are, let's say, make a reservation for a restaurant, you go in and you see the ambiance and the lights are slightly dim. There's evidence that because the lights are slightly dimmer, people are in more of a vulnerable state, which allows them to actually purchase more. So they receive a slight increase in their order value, right? Apple stores, same thing, right? Apple just didn't focus on designing a store experience based upon how it looked, but they also considered how it sounded and felt and even smelled, right? That's because our brains process this sensory information to create that emotional response long before rational thought kicks in. I think that brands creating multisensory experiences are seeing engagements, significant engagements, higher than relying on just visual elements alone. So I know for our listeners working to build memorable brand moments and understanding how to engage multiple senses, even in this digital environment, can create deeper, more lasting emotional connections, right? Than just standard advertising, right? It can't match that. So Richard, how are innovative brands using sensory elements beyond just visuals to create a more immersive and emotional resonant customer experience?
I think they're relying on, I mean, this was back when I was at American Express, and we were kind of targeting the next generation of American Express card holders. And then that's where the birth of influencer marketing came about, by having existing card users really lead the charge in advocating for the brand, especially when it comes from you were launching a specific promo. I feel like consumers nowadays don't want to be sold to. I think they're looking for some type of, they're looking for a specific lifestyle, whether it be health induced or something that would obviously benefit their family, their lifestyle specifically. I've been noticing an overall trend that how specific micro macro influencers who have a small base, but yet their messaging is so impactful, where they're letting these people into their lives with like either an IG story, a TikTok story, and I feel like from there's always a CTA at the very end of it, like continue to follow me or continue to click the bio of the link. They want that human connection to be able to connect with somebody, because I feel like after COVID, and I think a lot marketing and product marketing has significantly changed, because I think the consumer took it upon themselves to continue to research and not be sold to. And when it comes to paid advertisements, coming into our emails and obviously like inundating us and through advertisements. But I feel like a lot of the consumers have really nowadays are very smart and keen to really kind of either speak to someone they know about a specific brand by word of mouth, which is marketing 101, or continue to do the research on their own. That's my
Yeah,
experience. Yeah.
yeah. And I know, Natalie, with regard to working with some of the brands under your portfolio and thinking about sensory experiences, you mentioned fast signs, and obviously those signs are going to go on a brick and mortar location, right? And we understand how, the trends and ebbs and flows of foot traffic, so on and so forth. So how do these signs help to create the sensory experience, right? Do you have any insight on that or any opinion about it?
Sure. I think our brand, we actually did some brand refreshment several years ago for fast signs. Our original slogan was more than fast, more than science, and we wanted to get away from it, and also demonstrate that fast science is not about just science. It's just about visual solutions in general. And where we landed after deep research of our consumer, we uncovered that they were very overwhelmed with making decisions like visual identity for their new brand or business, or maybe taking on a project representing their company for a trade show or whatever solution they were choosing. So we empowered them to feel more like heroes, and we focused on highlighting solutions and stories of our customers, making them play a central role in our marketing and communication. And our slogan actually became "Make Your Statement." We started focusing on making sure that that emotional connection is there, that we are represented as an archetype of magician, actually, and we are helping them to solve that, making them feel empowered and proud of what they deliver as an end result. And that actually had quite a good success. It helped us to increase our top of the mind awareness by 2 points versus previous year, which is huge. And really, it's hard to achieve without significant ad spend increase. So I feel like that creating that emotional connection and empowering our brand to have a stronger personality drove people to us naturally in some ways. And obviously, we all start with digital advertising, and then our customer ends in a store where they interact with people that help them to craft those visual solutions. And that's where customer service comes in place and other things. But just that first connection is very important.
Yeah. And obviously when firming up on that connection, making that connection more cohesive, I think building communities are a critical part of that, right? And I know the most powerful brands today aren't just selling to customers, but they're actually building communities around shared values and experiences. So if you take Peloton, for example, they transformed from a fitness company to a global community united by shared goals and experiences. Or Sephora, there's Beauty Insider community has become a hub where makeup enthusiasts connect beyond just transactions. So for our audience of brand builders, and understanding how to foster these communities isn't just about driving sales, but it's about creating emotional ecosystems where a brand becomes a part of people's identities and daily life. So Nataly, what strategies have you seen work effectively for brands trying to build authentic communities rather than just customer bases?
Well, I think you gave a great example of Peloton, and what comes to mind, like even Starbucks, they don't sell coffee, right? They sell a place that feels comfortable to work from. They sell community of like-minded people who go there and maybe work remotely. So it's creating those offline experiences sometimes plays a crucial role of how you make your customer a loyal customer, how you continue your conversation and connection beyond this, whatever you do, if it's a product or it's a service. How do you close that loop? How do you, again, unify them, make them your promoters naturally?
Yeah. And Richard, how does community building impact traditional marketing metrics like customer acquisition costs and lifetime value?
That's a really good question. I think at Amex, a really good example while I was there was like Small Business Saturdays and our partnership with the Small Business Association. That was a time where a lot of people were going into the business for themselves, and you started to really get to know these individuals on a personal level. And at the same time, when we would have showcases or conferences where we had to get people would come up to our booth and then they would give us insight and perspective, and that would be put into a PowerPoint presentation. And then we would obviously talk about it and strategize. I definitely see how Small Business Saturdays was very grassroots when it first started, and now it's become this huge movement during the month of November. That in itself is really positioning the brand not as a product, but more as a participant in the customer journey, and then really kind of looking at how that. You had mentioned visual and emotional consistency. Like how does that particular community align with the imagery and the message and tone across the platform at American Express? So, there was a lot of attention to detail, and I think partnership is definitely key. I think a lot of companies now are coming together to kind of do a collab or a collaboration with either a micro macro influencer or a specific brand or a nonprofit or profit organization to really kind of send a key message out.
Yeah. And Natalie, how can smaller brands with limited resources begin fostering community connections that drive emotional loyalty?
Smaller brands, well, it may be as easy as creating a group or a private channel, making your customer and consumer feel special, that they have heard that there's a place that they can maybe share their experience, that there's loyalty programs, again, rewarding your consumers by taking actions or sharing their opinion about the brand, participating. So there's all kinds of smaller tools right now that you can definitely use to engage your consumers and build community around your brand, making them feel proud that they chose you, making them feel a part of the process.
I think that's one of the quintessential ways to really build an emotional connection is if you involve community, right? Because most of the offerings, it doesn't matter what you're offering, you want to be incorporated in the lifestyle of your target audience, right? And so a great way to do that is to build that community around your offering that ultimately would help to infuse itself into the lifestyle of your target audience by virtue of them continuing to put inputs into the community. And the outputs is not only just the purchase of your brand, but also the affinity for your brand and the experience that's created within those communities. So I absolutely think that nowadays it is critically important for any brand to create a community because at the end of the day, everyone has the same offering. Right. You know, you have competitors that are offering the same thing, but what else can you offer, can you provide for your audience to truly connect with your brand and remain loyal? So on our next segment, it's called The Bad, Bold, or Brilliant. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some examinations of emotionally driven branding campaigns. And I would love to know your expert opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and explain the case study, and I'll go ahead and ask for your opinion. Okay. All right. So there'll be three of them here. So the first one is Teleflora. It's the Power of Wishes. It's a 2024 holiday season campaign. And it was the most emotionally engaging holiday ad of 2024 that essentially featured a hospitalized boy and a magical snowman. Aiming to inspire hope and positivity, it created in partnership with Make-A-Wish, and the campaign encourages donations to help grant transformative wishes for children with critical illness. So, what's your opinion? Do you think this campaign was bad, bold, or brilliant? And if so, why?
Brilliant. The reason why is because I feel like you are able, I mean, everyone has in their life has experienced someone with a specific health issue. And I just think that also this kind of like grabbed the emotional part of me to show some compassion and empathy toward this individual. And then from there, that just made me want to kind of lean in and learn more about not only the organization or the partnership, but also like, how is he doing now?
That's a good point. The next we have Clorox Clean Feels Good campaign that was this year, 2025. They launched a brand new platform, Clean Feels Good, which shifts the focus from the necessity of cleaning to its emotional rewards. Now, the campaign, developed with scientists and neurotech company Emotive, highlights the psychological benefits and cleanliness such as stress relief or sense of well-being and so on. Now, by positioning cleaning as an act of self-care, Clorox taps into relatable everyday rituals and demonstrates how even practical products can have a profound emotional impact. So, what do you think about this execution? Is it bad, bold, or brilliant?
I think it's pretty bold to take a cleaning product into emotional space. I think it's a great insight for sure. People, especially probably after pandemic, maybe have a negative perception of certain products or that it's associated with disease. Positioning it as self-care, which is so needed in the modern world, may touch more people than just people who love to clean.
That's a great point. I think it's I'll take it even a notch up. I think it's brilliant because of those points that you mentioned. You know, Clorox is a staple brand. You know, I think everyone knows, especially if you have ever cleaned anything in your life, you know about Clorox, right? And so what other innovative campaign or idea could they have, right? I think this is a brilliant way to extend their staple brand into a more innovative way to communicate. And so if this was successful and they continue to double down on this, people would start to associate self-care with cleanliness and then with cleanliness with Clorox. right? And so there is something there, which is why I think it's brilliant. I think they can branch off of this campaign in many different ways. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's brilliant there. But I don't know, Richard, what are your thoughts?
I agree. Being OCD myself, I definitely am all about cleanliness altogether, especially, I mean, but I think that the messaging was definitely very transparent and it resonated obviously with me in terms of just being able to, especially you raise a good point in terms of after COVID. I feel there was somewhat of a lot of consumers probably had that sense of paranoia, but yeah, I definitely had some very strong key pain points that I took from it.
Now, last is Google's Dear Sydney Olympic ad. And so Google's ad for the 2024 Paris Olympics featured a young girl using Gemini AI to help write a heartfelt letter to an Olympic athlete, Sydney McLean. And the campaign aimed to showcase AI's role in supporting creativity and emotional expression. However, viewers criticized the ad for replacing genuine personal sentiment with artificial assistance. And many felt that outsourcing a child's emotional gesture to AI made the message feel cold and inauthentic, sparking backlash on social media and raising concerns about the technology's encroachment on human connection. So I don't know. What do you think? Is this bad, bold, or brilliant?
I am not sure what to say about that, but when you were reading about it, I had absolutely the same thoughts as those people who criticized the ad. I think there's so many different ways to apply AI, and there's a big talk about ethical AI, and one part of it is that we are trying to actually calm people down that AI is not going to replace you, replace your job. Showcasing AI playing a critical role between human connection um, is probably not to their benefit. I am not sure. I mean, that's great if she read it and believed it, but it's also scary at the same time. That's just
Mm,
plays into concerns of what consumers have right now about AI.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that the Google's Dear Sydney ad was bad if I were to categorize it that way, because one, I think Google historically has had a bad rap on trying to really get their grasp on what consumer adoption through, Google Glass that failed, Google Plus that failed, right? And so I think the ideas are good. The idea is brilliant in terms of how it can impact people's lives, but the way in which it's rolled out, I think it's bad. And I think that this is a common theme, especially when I work with developers who are developing apps, so on and so forth. They don't know anything about marketing, right? And so things I can just tell like this is very engineer focus on the functionality, but not understanding how consumers may feel about it, right? And so when it comes to AI adoption across the board, a lot of people can see it as a good tool, but are still skeptical with regard to how it's going to impact our daily lives. And when you connect it with a campaign where a young girl is writing a heartfelt letter, it's almost like I think people are more protective of children than anything else, and they want to protect them from this technology that could be potentially damaging to their well-being. And so that's where I feel like this campaign was bad, because I felt like they should have used something else in order to convey the benefits of using a Gemini AI. But I don't know, Richard, I see you shaking your head here. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I just took the emotional component out of it, and it really there was a lack of sincerity there, especially if you're writing something and you're kind of even openly admitting that you're using AI to help you. I just think that we're going in a different direction. I feel like sometimes I'll see it with either colleagues or friends, or they'll send me a text message. It's probably like a 2-paragraph text, and I'm like, "Can you call me? Because I'm just wondering what you really want to say." As opposed to have it AI generated. But yeah, I just think that it just took the emotional component. I thought it was bad, and also it's just the way you mentioned a developer. Developers are very. I work with developers all the time, so they're very introverted, very calculated, and very process oriented. So this was calculated, and to the point where like I already knew what the end result was from a documentation perspective. So that's why I was just like, okay. And I feel like Google can get away with something like this because they already have a household brand. But at the same time, like you said, with some of the products they've recently launched, hasn't been the most successful. So, yeah.
All right. So now we're going to move to tools you can't live without. And so each one of you, please share a tool that you cannot live without, whether it's in your personal, professional life, and how you apply these tools. So Natalie, won't you go first?
Sure. I think when we are rolling out campaigns on a major scale, social listening is one of the tools that I love, especially with rebrands or brand refinements. Understanding how consumers going to react or what we hear in terms of feedback is very crucial. They also play an important role in crisis management, into diving deeper into trends that we were talking before, if you want to capitalize on trends. So definitely one social media tool that we use a lot. I'm trying to think, and I love automations and data-driven decisions. So HubSpot is one of my favorite tools for customer journeys, and especially detailed customer journeys, connecting behaviors with customer actions and making sure that we can send appropriate and fast communication that is relatable to the actions that a person taken on a website, for example, or depending what source they came from. So definitely those two.
Okay, what about you, Richard?
Professionally, I've always used like Confluence Pages, which is like a form of documentation from a product management standpoint. It's a foundation for it could be a resource for people to find. Also, you can put as much information in it when it comes to specific stakeholders or a part of a project. CMesh is also a favorite one of mine that from an SEO perspective, we're able to kind of really search, have, provide keywords that would help either existing user or an interested customer to help find us digitally online. And also those keywords actually are helpful when it comes to a specific microsite when we're pushing out a specific product or SaaS product. So that's always good.
Yeah. So now we've had this great conversation here, and I want to make sure that people have a chance to get in contact with you, learn about what you have to offer. So Nataly, why don't you go ahead and tell us, where can people contact you? What do you have to offer, and what do you want us to know?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You can find me on LinkedIn as Nataly Chigireva. I am specializing for the last 20 years in building authentic brand identities, refining brand messaging, go-to-market strategies, advertising campaigns. So pretty much everything related to brand sales, new products.
Awesome. And so they can find you on LinkedIn, correct? Okay. All right. Awesome. And then Richard, what about yourself?
They can find me on LinkedIn as well. I just recently launched a website, the Power of Digital Dialogue. It's become a blog, and it's obviously going to segue into a podcast soon. So fingers crossed. I think that's where they could find me.
Awesome. Well, I am your host, Juntae DeLane, founder at Digital DeLane. We are a full-service digital marketing agency, and we help to bring new brands, campaigns, and ideas to life. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Brand Behavior. We hope you've gained valuable insights into the psychology of consumer behavior and how it influences marketing strategies. So don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and visit our website, digitaldelane.com/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share it with your network. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.